As the sunset descended, the sky in Valencia turned orange, casting long shadows across the city's quiet streets. The weak light of the sun gradually faded, blending into the distant clouds over the Torrefil neighborhood where life continued peacefully and unchanged. Cars rolled gently along the deserted streets, occasionally interrupted by a cool breeze that stirred the leaves on the sidewalk. Everything here seemed to slow down as day turned to night, bringing peace and tranquility to those who lived there. In a small house in the dim light of the afternoon, Cron, a German shepherd, lay on the floor, his bright eyes following every movement of his owner, the large, strong dog with a shiny black and brown coat. Cron's life before the tragedy was a series of happy and peaceful moments. Every day he was taken by his owner for walks running in the park and sleeping beside his owner on cool evenings. The bond between Cron and his owner seemed perfect, a pure love between humans and animals. No one could have imagined that right here a tragedy was about to unfold forever, changing the fate of Cron and his owner's life. Julian, the owner of Cron, was a man in his 40s with a rugged appearance and the deep lines on his face that time and life had left behind. Julian lived in solitude. His life was not always easy. He had a painful past where mistakes and failures once caused him to lose everything. Before adopting Cron, Julian had lived a life filled with hardship and sorrow. He had been a firefighter, but an accident on the job forced him to leave behind the career he loved. That loss was not just about his job, but a loss of spirit as Julian felt he could no longer stand firm in life. Amid those dark days, Julian found solace when he met Cron. The dog's loyal and loving eyes saved him from many long nights of loneliness and despair. Though their bond was deep, a tragedy was about to strike that no one could foresee. Their peaceful life was quickly shattered by a horrific event that would change both Julian and Cron's lives forever. And that was the moment when everything would change. As the sun set and darkness began to blanket the quiet streets of Valencia, a tragic event occurred, completely disrupting the peaceful atmosphere. A brutal and unbelievable scene was unfolding in a high-rise building on the 14th floor of an old apartment block. Cron, the German shepherd. A strong and lovable creature was standing near the apartment window. His eyes silently looked out, seemingly sensing that something was wrong. But before he could realize it, his owner, a 43-year-old man filled with anger and impatience, pulled him out of the window without any explanation. This man, with a history of violence and disappointment in life, let his anger cloud his judgment. In an instant, he shoved Cron out of the window, causing the dog to be caught off guard. Cron's world was nothing but the vastness of the air, followed by a catastrophic impact as he fell. A loud thud echoed through the neighborhood, shaking the quiet atmosphere. Cron slammed into the ground, his heavy body making contact with the cold, hard surface, causing his spine and hind legs to break. Blood poured from his mouth, and various severe wounds spread across his body. He didn't scream, didn't whimper. He just lay still in the rubble, his eyes wide open, filled with confusion and pain. Everything was blurred to Cron, but the look in his eyes, as if asking why he had to endure such cruelty, lingered in the minds of those who witnessed it. No one in the apartment complex noticed the incident, or if they did, they chose to look away, avoiding the tragic scene. A dreadful silence enveloped the area, as though everyone had turned away from an unbelievable event. But in a brief moment, Cron's fate was altered entirely, when a brave soul stepped forward. Samuel, a 9-year-old boy living near the complex, walked with his mother to the nearby supermarket. Like every day, he was happily and carelessly walking along the street. But as they passed the building, he suddenly heard a loud sound like something heavy falling to the ground. He immediately turned around and ran toward the noise, as if some strong impulse was driving him not to ignore it. Samuel's mother, though trying to hold him back, couldn't stop her son from running toward the rubble. With a mix of curiosity and worry, the boy stopped when he saw Cron motionless on the ground. He couldn't fully grasp the gravity of the situation, but he could feel the dog's pain. "There's a dog over there," Samuel shouted, calling to his mother. In an instant, the mother rushed to catch up with him, but upon seeing the scene, she was struck silent. Despite the pain in her eyes, Samuel didn't pull back. He ran toward Cron with a strong feeling of empathy. He knelt beside the dog, gently stroking it. Though Cron couldn't move, the boy knew he had to do something. Samuel's mother quickly took out her phone to call the police and the veterinary rescue team. But time stretched on a long 17 minutes before the rescue team arrived. While waiting, neighbors from nearby apartments started to gather, some whispering that Cron was dead, that the dog couldn't survive. However, Samuel's presence sparked a small flicker of hope. The boy never took his eyes off Cron until the veterinarian arrived to examine the dog's condition. "He's alive," the vet said in an almost disbelieving tone. Cron's weak breath was the only sign he hadn't given up. The people held their breath as if they could feel the life still in the poor animal's body. While everyone cared for Cron and hoped he would survive, the man responsible for the incident stood at a distance, watching the unfolding events without remorse. He was a middle-aged man living alone in a 14th-floor apartment. The neighbors knew he had a troubled past with signs of violence and uncontrollable anger. When the rescue team arrived, the man showed no remorse and stated that Cron had become aggressive and was no longer a lovable dog. He justified his actions by claiming that the dog had attacked him in a fit of uncontrollable rage and that he couldn't endure the danger from such an animal. Although these words held no weight in the eyes of those who witnessed the event, they shed some light on the man's character. This impatient, quick-tempered person was ready to throw everything away over a minor dissatisfaction. They knew that this was not the first time he had shown a lack of control over the creatures around him, and that his betrayal of Cron was not merely an act of temporary anger, but the result of a soul ravaged by unresolved pain. No one could fully comprehend the shortcomings of a person who created an innocent life only to abuse it. But for Cron's previous owner, everything seemed to be over, and once again Cron became the victim of a world full of pain and betrayal. The tragic event not only forced Cron to face severe injuries, but also revealed a dark side of humanity. Fortunately, with the help of an innocent boy and the love from the community, there was still hope. However, the price of this betrayal went beyond just saving a dog's life. It became a long fight to seek justice for Cron, an innocent creature simply wishing to be loved and protected. When Cron was taken to the veterinary hospital, his condition was extremely critical. The veterinarians quickly got to work and treatment began immediately. Surgery was unavoidable to save Cron's life. During the more than 3-hour-long surgery, the doctors had to repair the severe fractures in Cron's spine and hind legs. The deep wounds caused internal bleeding and collapsed Cron's lungs, making recovery a considerable challenge not only physically, but also mentally. In the operating room, the constant hum of machines and medical instruments filled the air. But one thing was clear: the doctors had to do their best to preserve this dog's life. When the surgery ended, the vet looked at Cron's wounds, unable to hide his concern. "He's alive, but we don't know yet if he will fully recover," the vet said to Julian, who was anxiously standing outside the operating room looking in. When Cron was brought into recovery, his small body was connected to intravenous tubes and machines to monitor his health. Truly, only a miracle could help him survive this stage. And that miracle would come from the love Cron would receive throughout his recovery journey. Despite his complicated past and personal pain, Julian, who adopted Cron after the tragic incident, decided to devote all his love and care to the dog. He didn't see Cron as a creature to be saved, but as an essential part of his healing. The relationship between Julian and Cron began here through each moment of care, encouragement, and love. Despite his painful past and mistakes that led him to lose many important things, Julian knew he couldn't let Cron suffer anymore. Each time Cron opened his eyes after surgery, Julian would sit by him, comfort him, and encourage him, despite the exhaustion and stress from work and life weighing down on him. One of the most special moments during Cron's recovery was when Julian took him outside for a walk. Though the dog was still weak, and his hind legs couldn't move normally, the warm sunlight and fresh air created a peaceful and comforting moment between the two friends. Julian gently supported Cron strolling, and each time Cron leaned against him to regain strength, Julian felt the deep connection between them. "Together, we'll get through this," Julian whispered to Cron every time they went for a walk. Even though Cron couldn't speak, Julian could see trust and hope in his eyes. That's why Julian didn't give up. Even though the road ahead was still filled with challenges, rehabilitation was an essential part of Cron's treatment. After his basic wounds were treated, the doctors began encouraging exercises to help Cron gradually regain his ability to move. However, this was not easy, as Cron had to endure intense pain while trying to relearn how to walk. Julian and the vet would bring Cron into the rehabilitation room every morning. The simple exercises at first, such as walking with the help of a support device, gradually became a significant challenge for the dog. Each time Cron managed to take a few steps, his tired body would force him to sit down, but Julian never left him. He was always encouraging and patiently helping Cron through each difficult step. One of the most essential rehabilitation exercises was to help Cron regain the flexibility in his hind legs. Every time Cron took a step, even if it was a small one, Julian would gently praise and encourage him. He knew every success was a great victory in this journey, no matter how small. Those moments were symbols of resilience for Cron and Julian, who had learned that love and patience could help overcome any challenge. Every afternoon after the strenuous exercises, Julian would bring Cron home and sit together under the sunset. Cron often curled up in Julian's lap, his eyes closing in contentment. These were the warmest moments of the day, when they felt the most profound connection and all the pain and fatigue seemed to vanish, giving way to love and hope. However, recovery was never a smooth path. Every time Cron faced pain from unhealed wounds, Julian felt as if his heart were being torn apart. Sometimes Cron was so exhausted that he didn't want to continue with the exercises, but Julian's perseverance inspired the dog to keep going. Together, they overcame each challenge, and the hesitant steps they took at the beginning gradually turned into more confident strides. The veterinarian was even surprised by Cron's rapid recovery. Signs of optimism began to appear after a few weeks of treatment. The dog could stand on his legs but still couldn't walk normally. However, Cron's first steps after no longer needing the wheelchair were a touching moment. Every step forward was accompanied by Julian, who continued to encourage, care for, and patiently wait for the day Cron would fully recover. For Julian, each progress Cron made was a victory for the dog and himself. Throughout the recovery process, Julian also began to heal himself. He learned that love is not just about care, but also about patience, trust, and companionship during the most challenging moments. Cron's survival was a physical recovery and a spiritually meaningful journey. The love from Julian helped the dog overcome the pain and regain life. Despite all the difficulties and challenges, they fought together, and each step Cron took was proof of the power of unconditional love and resilience. Their story serves as a testament that everything can be overcome with love and perseverance, no matter the pain life brings. Julian had always carried a haunting past within him. It was a part of his life that he had always tried to avoid and bury deep inside. Before adopting Cron, he was a man full of wounds, living in pain and failure. Julian's past was not filled with legendary tales of courage or victories, but with days submerged in violence and anger. He had lost control, hurt those around him, and destroyed his happiness. However, Julian's past wasn't told with exaggeration or drama. Instead, it is revealed gradually through gentle conversations with other characters in the story, such as Alba, a veterinarian at the clinic where Cron is treated. Alba, though unaware of all the details of Julian's past, could feel the emotional scars he carried. She didn't judge him, but helped him face his past mistakes and find ways to heal. Through casual conversations, viewers gradually realized that Julian isn't indifferent. He had learned to take responsibility for his wrongdoings in the past, and because of that, he decided to change. One of the special moments is when Julian, in a quiet moment, shared with Alba, "I used to be a different person. I don't want to continue living with that regret. But Cron, he helped me find myself again." Flashbacks of Julian's past are portrayed through his gentle interactions with Cron. The first meetings, the walks with Cron, and even the quiet moments together all gradually reveal a story of transformation. The scars in his heart began to heal, not just with time, but with the love he gave to Cron. Over time, Julian became a patient and dedicated man, ready to endure hardship to help Cron recover. Julian never spoke too much about his violent past. Instead, he acted. Each time he cared for Cron. Each step in the dog's recovery journey was also a step in Julian's redemption. How he gently comforted Cron whenever the dog was in pain, and how he persistently helped Cron learn to walk again, showed a man no longer running from his past but facing it head-on, starting anew. With each act of care, Julian's change became more apparent. He was no longer a man with a dark past, but a father, a friend, and a protector of Cron. This dedication, this change in how he treated Cron was evidence of Julian's redemption journey. The legal battle over Cron's custody was an essential part of the journey for both the dog and Julian, where it was not only a fight between two beings, but also a significant struggle to establish the rights of animals in society. After Julian adopted Cron, it wasn't long before the dog's previous owner, who had thrown Cron from the 14th floor, decided to sue for the right to regain custody, claiming he had a psychological and emotional connection to Cron. This lawsuit sparked a fierce debate not just in the community, but also in the courts. Everyone knew that Cron had been treated poorly and his wounds would not heal easily. However, the former owner argued that his emotional bond with Cron still existed, so he didn't want to lose the dog he had raised. The court began to examine the case with increasing tension. Lawyers argued continuously about Julian's rights, the man who had cared for Cron with all his love and patience, and the former owner who had a history of animal abuse. Throughout the trials, the arguments between the parties were heated. On one side was Julian, who had poured his heart into helping Cron recover and giving him a new life. On the other was the man who had thrown Cron from the 14th floor, showing no remorse or regret. The testimonies from veterinarians and animal experts all sided with Julian, as they clearly saw Cron's recovery was due to love and careful attention to him. However, the legal intervention was not simple, as the legal rights issue had not yet been established. While the lawsuit was ongoing, the community and social media began to speak out to defend Cron. Animal lovers worldwide organized donation campaigns to support Cron and Julian, helping them with the finances needed to continue the legal battle. Pictures of Cron, the badly injured dog still fighting to survive, spread across the media, making it impossible for the public to ignore animal protection organizations like PETA, and volunteer groups also joined in supporting Julian in protecting Cron's rights. The lead veterinarian, Alba, was one of the key witnesses to Cron's miraculous recovery, affirming that his recovery wasn't a coincidence, but the result of Julian's love and care. Julian's lawyers argued strongly that taking away Cron's custody would not only be cruelty to the dog, but also a setback in protecting animal rights. After months of debate, the court finally reached a decision. In a tense trial, the judge ruled that Cron would stay with Julian, who had proven he was the only one capable of providing the dog a safe and happy life. This decision was a victory for Julian and a significant milestone in affirming animal rights in society. However, this ruling also reflects a change in how society perceives and treats animals. Previously, animals were regarded as property, but now they have been recognized as beings with the right to live and be protected. The community has witnessed a shift in the legal system where human love and care for animals are now more valued than ever before. Despite many challenges ahead, this ruling has opened a new era in animal protection, affirming that every creature deserves to be treated with compassion and justice. The legal battle over Cron's custody was a legal struggle, and part of a revolution in how we treat animals. It was a fight to establish that love and care are the deciding factors, not rights or past history. The court's ruling was a victory for kindness, resilience, and unconditional love between Julian and Cron. And it was also a victory for a society that is gradually changing, where animal rights are more respected than ever. Finally, Cron and Julian's painful and challenging journey reached a critical turning point. After all the physical and emotional pain, Cron gradually recovered. The dog's first steps, no longer needing a wheelchair, were truly moving. Hesitant yet determined, rising from injury and pain. These first steps were proof of resilience and the strength to overcome adversity. The scene where Julian stood by gently supporting Cron as they walked together under the warm sunlight was not just a moment of transition, but also a symbol of rebirth. It marked the beginning of a new life where love and perseverance helped them rebuild everything from what was lost. The end of this story is not just the end of a painful journey, but the beginning of a new life full of hope. Cron and Julian start their new life in peace amidst the beauty of nature and love, free from the old pain and shadows of the past. Each day, they can walk a new path, no longer burdened by the wounds of the past, but full of new hopes and new opportunities. Their life is not just about the recovery of a dog, but also the story of a man's healing. Julian, who once lived in the darkness of his past, now finds peace in the love and bond with Cron. They saved each other and became sources of strength for one another, continuing to walk together into a new life. The main message of this story is the power of courage, unconditional love, and forgiveness. These values can help overcome any challenge, even in the worst situations. This is not just the story of Cron, a small creature finding life again after betrayal, but also of Julian, who rediscovered himself after great pain. They prove that no matter how hurt we are, we can always find faith in life and the connection between humans and animals. Finally, the story ends on an open note, not with a clear or definitive conclusion, but with a new beginning. It is not just Cron's recovery, but also Julian's journey, who has overcome his dark past to become Cron's trustworthy friend and protector. Sometimes the one who saves also needs salvation from past wounds. We would like to sincerely thank all of you who have accompanied Cron and Julian throughout this challenging journey. Their story is not just a lesson in love and perseverance, but also a reminder that we all can overcome difficulties in life as long as we have courage and love. Please continue to support and share this story to bring hope to those who need to be saved. Thank you for being part of this journey.